In the modern day of college football, we have become accustomed to the playoff format, which has been in place since 2013. Started with the 4-team playoffs, where 4 teams had a realistic shot at playing for the national championship at the end of the season, up until last year when the 12-team playoff was introduced. But what about before? Why was the playoff system so clamored? Why did people want that so bad as opposed to what we had before? Well, let's take a look back in time and go over one of college football's most controversial eras ever. Of course, and we all remember it, I'm talking about the BCS era.
ABC Sports proudly presents exclusive coverage of the National Championship game. It's the grand finale of the Bowl Championship Series.
So as you're probably aware, the BCS Championship is an era that is riddled with controversy, and because of that, I'm not going to be able to talk about every single little thing that happened within the organization, because this video would be 7 hours long, and I'm not one of those YouTubers that can make a 7-hour long video. So instead, what I'm going to do is basically go through each year and talk about the controversies, at least at the big bowl game and national championship levels, and just kind of go through every one up until the end of the BCS era. And we can start where it all began back in 1992 with the Bowl Coalition. The year is 1992 and you're watching the first ever regulated national championship game in NCAA football history. Ranked at number 2 is the Alabama Crimson Tide, led by head coach Gene Stallings. Ranked at number 1 are the Miami Hurricanes, led by Dennis Erickson. This game came to form under the Bowl Coalition, an organization tasked with pitting the top 2 ranked teams against each other at the end of the season. The organization was created because before this very game, national champions were decided by a vote of sports writers from the Associated Press and not from a championship game. While the top 2 teams in the country had the final battle a few times throughout the 20th century, it was always by coincidence, and those games were only considered national championship games by technicality. The first official national championship game was won that night in the Sugar Bowl by Alabama. The Bowl Coalition continued to operate until it was replaced by the Bowl Alliance in 1995, a similar system that continued the operations of the first and continued through 1997. Little did the world know that college football was about to change forever. In 1998, we saw the emergence of the Bowl Championship Series, a bowl game governing system that would dominate the headlines in college football for the next 15 years. The BCS system is one that is known primarily for the controversy that it brought to the sport. You see, the BCS was a ranking system compiled of various computer algorithms. These algorithms factored in things such as strength of schedule, records, and quality wins. As you can probably guess, this led to combative comments from fans and coaches as to how the computers decided what was what. The first of the controversies came as early as Season 1, when Kansas State finished 3rd in the country but was left out of a major bowl game in favor of the Alamo Bowl. This was made worse when you remember that number 4 Ohio State and number 8 Florida were invited to BCS bowl games. A rule was made quickly after called the Kansas State Rule, which fixed the system to where all 3rd-ranked teams would clinch an automatic bid to a BCS game. Kansas State would continue to be screwed over by this organization as 1 year later in 1999, the Wildcats finished 6th in the country but were left out of the BCS games in favor of number 8 Michigan. The pick had another string of controversy tied to it as in-state rival Michigan State was ranked 1 spot below them at number 9, despite having the head-to-head victory earlier in the season. Michigan, being one of the biggest brands in the sport, led to allegations that the BCS system favored brand identity over athletic integrity, an accusation that is still present to this very day in the college football playoff. The next major controversy came in the year 2000, when the national championship was chosen to be Florida State versus Oklahoma. The issue here is that Florida State was a one-loss team. The same could be said for number 3 Miami, who beat Florida State earlier in the season. The reason why FSU got the bid over Miami is because they played an extra game, forcing the computer to decide between an 11-1 team and a 10-1 team. Because of this, the BCS took the team with more wins, despite the head-to-head matchup. Florida State lost in the national championship, while Miami went on to win in the Sugar Bowl, leading to another BCS update. Quality wins were now added into the algorithm in an attempt to combat what had taken place. In 2001, the BCS system put number 4 ranked and conference championship loser Nebraska into the national championship. I'm not even going to elaborate on that. 2002 saw the Big Ten champs Ohio State make the national championship. The issue here is that this was the second straight season where the champions of the Big Ten and the Pac-10 couldn't face off in the Rose Bowl because they were playing in the BCS championship. This meddles with a college football tradition that had been put in place since 1947. 2003 featured one of the biggest stories from the era, when LSU and USC became co-national champions despite the whole point of the BCS being to prevent that. USC finished at number 1 in the AP and coaches poll, but LSU actually went to and won the national championship game. The winner of the BCS championship is supposed to always be voted at number 1 in the human-made polls to prevent this, but Lou Holtz, Mike Bellotti, and Ron Turner had different plans, as they all violated their contracts and voted against LSU in the final coaches poll, leading to both teams being recognized as national champions. 2004 was the first time we saw 5 teams finish in the regular season undefeated in the BCS era, causing the computer to factor in strength of schedule as the main decider for who would go to the championship. This caused Auburn, Utah, and Boise State to miss the game. Despite what the machines decided, many fans and coaches assumed that Auburn would be the one in the Natty that year based on the competition level from the SEC, but the belief was further cemented when the Natty resulted in a blowout and Auburn defeated the ACC champions in their bowl game. 2006 had a similar issue to 2004, where strength of schedule determined which of the several tied-up teams would make the national championship, leading to more disagreements. 2007 was the year of the upset, where multiple top 10 teams were defeated by inferior opponents almost every single week, sending the BCS rankings into literal chaos. No teams finished undefeated, and the entire year was full of insane rankings. What do you mean USF was ranked number 2 at one point? Yeah, speaking of number 2, the number 2 team in the rankings lost 7 times in the final 9 weeks of the season, leading to rankings that just felt like a dice roll every single week. 2008 was another tied-up scenario like 06 and 04. This time, the ending of the season saw the Mountain West Conference proposing the idea that a selection committee replace the polls and computers. This would eventually come to fruition with the college football playoff, but during this time, the idea was actually rejected by the BCS president. The 2009 season saw 5 different teams go undefeated by the end of the regular season. Alabama or Florida was basically a guaranteed bid into the BCS championship since the 2 teams were ranked number 1 and number 2 respectively, and were set to play each other in the SEC championship. The controversy stems from what happened in the Big 12 championship when undefeated Texas lost to Nebraska. At least that's what did happen until the officials determined that there was 1 second of game time remaining, resulting in just enough time for a Texas field goal, leading the Longhorns to a 13-12 victory. The Crimson Tide won its conference game against the Gators, leading to the BCS National Championship being between number 1 Alabama and number 2 Texas. Undefeated Boise State, Cincinnati, and TCU all stood to the side dumbfounded as that 1 second of game time basically robbed the possibility of one of those teams making it in. By 2010, things had gotten so bad that the United States government actually got involved and started to question the integrity of the BCS. Senator Orrin Hatch from Utah had said that he would hold congressional hearings on the BCS after Utah from the Mountain West Conference was snubbed from a championship appearance back in 2008. The government put heavy pressure on the BCS as an organization, with the Department of Justice even sending a letter wanting a detailed explanation as to why, number 1, every NCAA sport gets to have a playoff but football does not, and number 2, why does the NCAA not step in and do something about it? Any charges and government pressure was ultimately dropped after the plans for the college football playoff spawned for the next few years and the plans became public. This doesn't even touch on the whole tax evasion stuff with the Fiesta Bowl. That's just a whole different conversation on its own. Back to the football shenanigans, the 2011 season saw number 1 LSU take on number 2 Alabama in the championship game. This was controversial because the Tide had just lost to the same team a couple of weeks earlier and didn't even play for a conference championship. Oklahoma State from the Big 12 conference was in the conversation to be in the title game over Alabama, but the Cowboys lost to Iowa State in double overtime, dropping them down to number 4 in the rankings. Following State's win in the Big 12 championship, both Alabama and Oklahoma State had the same record of 11-1 by December. It was now up to the BCS to decide whether or not the Tide or the Cowboys would see LSU in the national championship. The Tide won the number 2 spot by 0.0086 of a point, making it the smallest margin between number 2 and number 3 in BCS history. To make this even crazier, the BCS was actually willing to crown LSU as national champions even if they lost. Since they beat the Tide a few weeks earlier, the BCS stated that they would actually crown LSU and Bama as co-champions unless the Tide won in a decisive manner. Fortunately, for my sake, Alabama won the game in a 21-0 shutout and put any co-champion talks to rest. 2012 actually wasn't that bad. 2012 actually wasn't that crazy as far as the Natty was concerned. I mean, the only crazy thing here is that Notre Dame kind of frauded its way to the number 1 spot before getting absolutely dismantled by the defending champions, allowing Alabama to win its 3rd title in 4 years. The most newsworthy things from this season were really just non-BCS things that I'll touch on later, like the whole Manti Te'o girlfriend thing. Yeah, that really has nothing to do with this. That's just a whole separate controversy from the era. 2013, finally, the last season of the BCS era. Hilariously, there was actually nothing wrong with this one. I mean, I personally hate some of it, but from an outsider's perspective, there was actually no controversy. Jimbo Fisher won a natty, but really that's the only takeaway. It's kind of hilarious. Over a decade of co-champions, dumb rankings, and government investigations, and it all ends on the most peaceful note imaginable. It's almost kind of fitting. The 2014 season was the first to introduce the 4-team playoff format with the CFP selection committee, and just like that, the BCS became a piece of history. I think despite the controversy, the BCS era of college football is still considered to be one of the greatest era of sports ever, mostly due to the presentation, the magical feeling of it, the whimsicality, and don't even forget the absolutely loaded amount of talent that came from this era. I mean, you had Vince Young, Tim Tebow, Adrian Peterson, Ed Reed, Michael Vick, Julio Jones, Eli Manning, Darren McFadden, Reggie Bush, Robert Griffin III, even Johnny Manziel. As controversial as he is one of the most recognized players from this era. The coaches too. Oh my goodness, this era had some of the wildest coaching classes I've ever seen. Les Miles, Urban Meyer, Pete Carroll, Chris Peterson, Frank Beamer, Bobby Bowden, Mac Brown, Bob Stoops, Jim Tressel, and oh my god, who could forget Nick Saban? The king, of course, who won 4 BCS titles. Yeah, did your team do that? Actually, hold up. Did your team do that? Also ignore the fact that I said, did your team do that, after bragging that he won 4 BCS titles when one of those titles was in fact not with my team. Even though the CFP introduced a better postseason format, there's just a feeling of whimsicality that is completely absent. Everything just feels more corporate. That doesn't make the game any worse, but it does take away from one of the things that made college football so popular in the first place: the passion. If they brought back the presentation of the BCS with the modern day playoff format, I don't think many people would have a problem with it. We'll just have to sit back and see if they ever decide to do that, or if they decide to release that sweet 64 team playoffs. Man, golly. Thank you guys for watching another episode of the Pigskin Parrot. I've been wanting to do a BCS video for such a long time now, and I've just never really gotten the opportunity until most recently, as I'm finally graduating college here in 2 weeks, and this big phase of my life is wrapping up. So the next time you see this video, I will either be in front of a green screen or there will be a completely different change of scenery. I just wanted to thank all you guys for being such big supporters of the channel. Don't forget to follow my new Instagram. Yes, the Pigskin Parrot official Instagram. I will link that down in the description below. I've plugged it in the last 2 videos, and it's been a success so far. I've been thanking all of the people for getting involved with the community. If you follow that, you will see all of the new Pigskin Parrot updates and every time I upload a new video. If you want other methods to figure out every time I upload a new video, you can hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you click the little bell next to the subscribe button, and you will get updates whenever I upload a new video. College football season's right around the corner. I can't wait to see what everybody does. Thank you all, for being such big supporters of the channel. I hope you know I love you, and I am very appreciative. Thank you all again for watching the Pigskin Parrot. My name is Preston McElhaney. Thank you for watching.
His life. He will live there all of his life, and he now has security, and his football team has won a national championship. And it's fun to see. And I congratulate him. Bobby Bowden, of course, is a longtime legend, and he too will congratulate Phil Jones.